Welcome back to Who Else Loves Art. As we near the end of Black History Month, we're looking at three Black artists who are seriously expanding what art can be and who it's for. We've got a cartoonist giving a classic comic strip a fresh, modern edge, an artist re-examining art history to make space for everyone who's been left out, and a filmmaker creating an immersive sound, film, and laser show centered on young people of color. Different mediums, different approaches, but all three are changing the conversation. Cartoonist Christina Stewart brings a fresh, modern voice to a classic comic strip, creating characters of color who get to be funny, complex, and fully human.
I always say that the best way to learn how to draw a comic is to draw a comic. When I started drawing, I was reading a lot of webcomics, and I wanted to do my own webcomic as well. There are so many different kinds of comics that the comics industry is really a lot bigger than just the part that most people see. A lot of people assume that the comic book industry is really male-dominated, but if you are a part of the industry, you can see that it is very much 50-50, if not more, leaning towards women. And that's one of the things that really inspired me. So with Elements Fire, I got to decide what they looked like and their mannerisms and how they interact with others. And I decided that I wanted, everyone in there to be a person of color because white people aren't the only people that have adventures. And I see so many stories that involve people of color, and it's always about the struggle, having to deal with racism, and it's like, that's really not all that we deal with. I really focus on trying to create a story and a character from their body movements, what kind of clothes they wear. I just try and pick a little bit of what is in their universe that makes them who they are. The original creator of Heart of the City, Mark Tatulli, was retiring. They wanted to continue, but also change it so that it was more for a readership for today, a more modern audience. Now I do Heart of the City full-time, and that is a daily comic that you can get. I know with Heart in particular, she's precocious and rambunctious, and I wanted to find a way to take that because when Mark was doing it, she was a little girl, 6 or 7, but take that and move it into the middle school area. What happens when you take that aggressive kind of personality and put it in middle school? How do people react to it? How does she think about not just her relationship with her best friend, but her best friend's relationship with their other best friend, and what does, her living space look like, and living with her mom, being a single mother. So I really just have to kind of imagine who is this person and what in their life makes them who they are, and try and get that across in 4 panels. So I have to really try and find a way to take an idea and simplify it down enough so that it can be on the page, but also clear enough that people understand what that is. And that's really what cartooning is about. It's about taking something big, an idea, and making it a lot clearer. So let's say I'm doing a strip for Heart of the City. I actually write all of the Heart of the City stories months and months ahead of time, so that when I'm actually drawing them, I'm just pulling from stuff that I've already written. Then I'll do these roughs. So they're basically just really messy ideas of what's going to go on the strip. They're basically just placements, those roughs. The inks is really my favorite part because it's really more of solidifying the pencils that you've already done. You really want to get something that you see in your mind, but getting on paper, it's difficult. I think you can tell stories with all different kinds of art styles, and it's really about how you use the art to really evoke a feeling or get an idea across. I like to think that I pick and pull from all kinds of people, so the way I draw eyes comes from some person, or the way I color comes from another, so I think it just kind of is an amalgamation of all the things that I'm interested in. I can't think of any comic creator that doesn't want there to be comics 70 years from now, And so if we want that to happen, we have to make sure that the landscape is good enough for everyone else to come into. So that's what I hope that I'm doing.
Next, we're looking at the work of Kehinde Wiley. Wiley uses the visual language of art history to center on Black and brown people, inviting all of us to rethink who gets represented on the walls.
It's important when thinking about art and thinking about museums to think about how one mirrors or sees themselves in the work that's on the walls. There's a type of permission being given when you are a young artist and you walk into a museum and you happen to see someone who looks like you. So this is a series of paintings that's inspired by St. Louis and Ferguson. What it does is takes into account the museum's extraordinary permanent collection and involves individuals who I met completely randomly in the streets. I went to the convenience store where Mike Brown was seen before his death. I went into Ferguson to find Black and brown men and women to become the subjects of these paintings.
In addition to being one of the top painters today, Kehinde Wiley has studied art history very carefully.
My obsession with art history is one about the power in art. So many of the poses that I borrow from in my work come from landed gentry, powerful white men generally, who commissioned these portraits to show status and wealth. What I'm doing in my own work is to replace that presence with people who happen to look like me. It's a statement about elevating an older language in painting and using its tools towards celebrating all of society. Using the tools of painting to say yes to people who are often ignored. What I wanted was to create an exhibition that was about the history of art, but also about the relationship of a museum to its community. I wanted to be able to have the Black population, the white population, the world in general at large to feel the museum's doors opened, a type of radical welcomeness. So the process of making these paintings is a lot different than, let's say, Barack Obama's official presidential portrait. There's something about the chance. Each of the models are completely new to me, and there's something kind of wonderful that these grand narrative paintings are all based on a single chance moment in the streets of St. Louis. Painting famous people is less interesting because they're already powerful. In the work that you see here, there is a radical transformation between the inside, the outside, the unknown personality, and the over-the-top scale. It really is an extraordinary way of looking at how to picture young Black and brown people in the 21st century.
And finally, we're turning to artist and filmmaker Nicole Miller. Through immersive sound, film, and laser installations, Miller centers the voices and experiences of young people of color, asking us to slow down, listen, and really be present.
My name is Nicole Miller. I'm an artist. This work here I made specifically for this space, and it started out with the production of the soundscape. So really the backbone of this installation is this 23-track surround sound, particularly because I'm working with young people. Like, it's been this sort of mission for me to try to find a way to position viewers to young people, specifically young people of color in America. This piece is a bit of an inverted film where the score is the sort of film and the moving image is more like the soundtrack. And so really the sort of narrative arc that's happening in the space is the soundscape. And so everything else that we worked on sort of radiated from the sound work. We have a sound, a signal, and the circus. And so the sound is the 23-track sound installation, and then a signal is this 4-laser animation installation that's projected on the back wall. And the circus sort of represents the 3 television screens in the space.
Nicole Miller's installation, A Sound, A Signal, The Circus, explores synesthesia, so it looks at sort of different forms of expression and articulation, and how that sort of relates to the experience of being alive or what it feels like to have a body.
This woman, Precious, who she read out loud to me this incredible poem that very specifically was about the body and her experience of like having trauma happen to her body at a young age, and it being translated through this sort of beautiful language she's developed as a poet. And that has become one of my favorite parts of the whole work at this point.
Different conversations just happened, and all of a sudden I was across from Nicole Miller, and so she has some of my poetry as part of the installation. The phrase "here and now" is coming up, and that phrase comes from Nicole Miller's meditation on what it means for like youth of color, particularly like Black youth, to be brilliant in the here and now and to like value their contributions now versus what we can put into them to be these people in the future.
I think this exercise of like withholding some things that I'm triggering people in the space to think about is really important, like the bodies, and also the circus. That you have this idea of the circus in the space, but there is no circus in the space. But you do have people that you can see rehearsing for different kinds of circuses. It's a kind of a space of becoming, like the rehearsal space. And so all the people that you're seeing and hearing, I'm hoping that you're thinking about them in terms of like people that are ever changing and not sort of static in their identities.
Particularly with Miller's themes, like about identity and transformation and body and youth-centered power, like all those themes converging, like what does that sound like? I don't know. And I think that's so cool. I love not knowing. If people can leave feeling more possible than they did coming in, I think that'll be a huge triumph.
Thanks for celebrating Black History Month with us. If you love art as much as we do, don't forget to subscribe. And while you're at it, check out our sister channel Aspire for more compelling Black stories. Stay curious.